no approval from the United Nations, and not even our best friends, as we've noted earlier, the Brits, are with him. So should he do it alone? And what is the impact if, after all his threats to Syria, the president just says, never mind, and does nothing? Former UN Ambassador John Bolton joins us. So that's your question.
No, I don't think he should use military force. I don't think there's a palpable American interest at stake here. I don't think we should take sides in this civil war. That's what the advocates of aiding the opposition are using the usage of chemical weapons to advocate. But that's something they've wanted to do for two and a half years. The argument that people make that having drawn a red line and having failed to do anything about it once before and failing to do it again means the president has to act this time, I think are clearly wrong as well. That's a classic example of what economists call the sunken cost fallacy. If you've done one foolish thing, what you've expended before doesn't mandate that you do another foolish thing. And the prospect of a minimal strike here really sends exactly the opposite signal of deterrence against the use of chemical weapons. It's an encouragement because the cost of using them is so low.
Well, even it's a New York Times an account today. It says if the U.S. merely does some sort of slap, some missile strike, doesn't go for Assad, no regime change, is that the words that was used is we're advertising our impotence.
Well, we're advertising the president's impotence, and I think this is important as well. People say the president's put the American credibility on the line, therefore he has to strike. He has damaged our credibility. I acknowledge that. But mostly he shredded his own. And it's about time for the rest of the world to understand that Barack Obama and the United States are not the same thing. We've got 1,200 days of this left. It's going to be very costly. But the United States should not be put in a worse position just to help out Barack Obama's credibility.
There have a lot of people have died. A lot of people have died before we got to chemical weapons. Now a lot of people have died with chemical weapons. Is there anything that we could, I mean, if it weren't national security weren't a consideration, but simply humanitarian reasons that we wanted to do there, could we even do anything that would, you know, for the future of the other people who are living there, the citizens who are living there? Is there anything we could do to help them?
Well, look, we are providing a lot of humanitarian assistance to the refugees. Nobody should be under the impression we're not doing anything.
I don't mean humanitarian. I don't mean food, clothing. I mean actually to help them end this so they don't live in fear every single night that something's going to happen.
My answer to that is no. And here's the hard reality. It is entirely possible that there are humanitarian tragedies all around the world that tug at our hearts, but that doesn't mean there's an American interest one way or the other in resolving the conflict. We've got huge interest at stake in the region as a whole, in Syria because of Iran in particular, but there are conflicts where there are no white hats and no American interest. People say we're not the world's policeman. That's not the issue here. The issue here is we should not use military force in pursuit of abstractions. We are not the world's nanny.
You know, I think, and I sort of look to see, like, I think, what happens if the goal is not to do a regime change, not to kill or get rid of Assad, and we send some missile strikes over, we're going to be quite effective with our missile strikes and destroying some things. The next day, there are going to be pictures of innocent citizens, either whether they're real pictures or false pictures, where they're going to be paraded through the streets where it says, look at those horrible Americans killing these babies, these infants, and it'll be used as sort of a recruitment. Then you've got Iran that'll feel sort of emboldened to help Syria, and then you've got Hezbollah helping Syria. Then they all blame Israel, and this Israel's just sitting there like a sitting duck, although, I mean, they all say that Israel provided the intelligence, which has gotten us all revved up here in the United States. I mean, this is a total no-win situation at this point.
Yeah. Well, there are always negative consequences to take into account in your overall calculus, and I don't think any one negative result should be enough to drive the policy. But the place you have to start is in defining what your objective is.
Well, I was going to say, what's positive about it? I mean, what can we possibly get?
Do that.
Is there anything positive we could get out of this? Could we really? And I go back to my question: is there anything we can actually really do? I mean, is there, you know, by a missile strike or by a military strike to change things there?
Well, I think if you decapitated the regime, if you assassinated Assad, if you killed his top military leaders, you could throw the government into chaos. But all that would do would bring the opposition into power. And as General Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, said about 10 days ago, that just means you're going to get another struggle, not just between al-Qaeda and other terrorists on the one hand versus nice Jeffersonian Democrats on the other, but the big glump in the middle is the Muslim Brotherhood. So do you really want, forget al-Qaeda for a minute, do you really want the Muslim Brotherhood coming to power in Syria as they did in Egypt?
Well, somebody's going to win or lose eventually on this, whether we're involved or not, I assume, at some point.
Well,
it may go on for years, but
it may simply go on for a long time. As Henry Kissinger said in the Iran-Iraq conflict in the 1980s, maybe both sides can lose.
Senator John McCain says that the Free Syrian Army is not al-Qaeda.
Well, that may be, but they're not the only element in Syria, and there's no guarantee at this point in a fluid situation who would control the opposition once Assad fell. A few well-placed assassinations among the pro-Western military leaders, their structures could fall apart too. This is like a big morass. And the issue for the United States, I still believe, is not what's happening in Syria, it's Iran's nuclear weapons program. And we've taken our eye off the ball of that yet again. The Iranians, as just revealed by the International Atomic Energy Agency's latest report, continue to make progress toward nuclear weapons. It will make the use of chemical weapons in Syria look incidental. The only interest we have in these chemical weapons is in making sure they don't get used outside Syria. And
of course, what happens to the chemical weapons? Who's going to secure them if more chaos goes into the region?
Yeah, and suppose the opposition takes charge and then they get the chemical weapons. Does that make us feel good? I don't think so.
It's a mess. Anyway, Ambassador, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now to tonight's hot button issue. What is motivating President Obama's action in Syria? A,